Yes, thank you. So my name is Maki Sato, and I'm from the University of Tokyo. So today I'm going to talk about between authenticity and artificial. I want to shed light on the contingency from a philosophical point of view. And I have been enjoying this past 2 days through the recordings of your colleagues. And I'm feeling a little bit awkward of my talk today. Here is what we, as a a clan of a philosopher, as a member of the philosopher, is thinking through the robotics and artificial intelligence or embodied intelligence. So, today I'm especially going to talk about mainly on perspectives from Japanese philosophy. So background of my interest, it comes from what is it to be human. So it is a real nice contingency from what Tamara has been saying. What is to be human is not to remain human at all. But my interest comes from what is to be human. How can we be more human? And that this is the reason why, as a philosopher, I'm looking at AI and robotics, especially on embodied intelligence. So where I come from is I wanted to identify the place of kokoro as a heart mind. So in relation to body or embodied or embedded and active and extended, I was wondering, how could we define our heart mind, our kokoro? When we look at the very old sutras of the Buddhism, and I'm quite sure that Professor Kanai has his company's name Araya from this Araya Vijnana, which you can see in my figure. But so in Buddhism philosophy, we think that there's a surface consciousness and deep consciousness. And the surface consciousness, of course, comes from this 5 inputs of 5 senses. And the mind or thought kind of combines all these 5 senses, which becomes a 6th consciousness, they call. And behind that, there's, well, it very depends on whether you are going to read deeply on Nagarjuna or Spasbandu, but and there's a deep consciousness called Manas or Araya Vijnana. But so, of course, Manas is about self-ego, and Araya is more about the foundational consciousness that is totally shared among all the humanity or even among the living beings. So then my question is, can embodied intelligence acquire heart mind? And here I was looking into this philosopher. He's not really a philosopher, he's more like a scientist, Tadakuma. He argued on the limitation of Western scientific approach. So he said that Western approach focuses on either on the work of mind or on substance changes based on causality. So here you can see his drawings, his own drawings. I have also got a copyright, but so he is saying that if we are only going to see or focus on the causality based on what we as human beings find from our own human perspectives, then it won't be perfect to understand the real world. That I think Antonio has been talking about this, what it is like to be a bat. And I'm quite sure that in the Western philosophy that a philosopher like Yuxku or Gibson is talking about affordance and modal shift to Umwelt, the world, how we are interact with world with the haptics or the other senses, which human doesn't really have. So he's saying that if we're going to only stick ourselves to causality, then that is only the thing that's human with all 5 human senses can understand, and we have to go beyond that. So he said that we have to, for a solution to that, he said that it is interesting that if we should focus more on event rather than what the heart mind is doing, or rather than how the substance itself is working on its own. Because I mean, even we're going to find the causality there, he's saying that it is only partial based on human perspective or cognition. And then my thoughts experience went on to habituality, and he is this guy on the screen is Nishida Kitaro, and he is saying that, I mean, so while I was thinking about the place of heart mind and the limitation of the Western science, I thought that why should I not really start thinking about experimental things like using habits? And then that came to, this philosopher, Nishida Kitaro's logic of Basho, which is quite famous among the Japanese philosophers. But he is saying, interestingly, he's saying that decision making is always happening among the interrelationship of the will. So he's saying that even though a particular decision making is done, there's always, it is not only you that is the substance or the subject that is making the decision, but is inclusive of the praise, which means that there's always unconscious interactions with the environment that you're thrown into. So from the perspective of the chain reactions on decision making, by Nishida Kitaro says that we already are seeing the shift from the field of decision making to the field of force of will. So this implies that the habitual lifestyle shapes a habitual way of thinking, but it is really important for us to think about the force of will that enables our ability to make decisions. So in terms of habits, he is saying that habits are created on social, affective, and it involves in our world. Of course, when I was listening to Antonio and Tamar's talk, of course, bat has its own habitual way of, seeing the bat's world. And if we are going to have like the tail or the sixth finger, as Tamar has been saying, then we will eventually create our own habitual mind shift through the new the sixth finger or the new embodied particles that is going to be attached to our body, right? So, yeah. So, but the importance is the habits or the habitual thinking or the habitual way of moving a body is only shaped according to the environment that we are thrown into, or accordingly to the person that we are interacting with. And that is the most important thing that Nishida Kitaro was saying. So on the causality and contingency, which is today's main talk, let's see. Oh, sorry. I thought that I was running out of my time, so I was just looking at chat. I'm sorry. So today's main talk is more on causality and contingency. So I was wondering, so how can we overcome habitual or no brain reaction? I mean, when it comes to habitual, then of course there's consciousness going on, as in the first slide, as you have seen. There's the five senses or six senses, but then under that, there's a deep consciousness that is there and consciously working behind the scene. So habits is created because we don't really consciously react to others or environment, but so it's more like no brain reaction to us when it comes to habitual, right? So I was wondering, how can embodied intelligence overcome the created causality? Because in the robotics or in the programmed codes, I'm quite sure that there's always a rigid kind of causality created in the programmed codes. And I was wondering, how can we overcome that kind of, rigid causality that is embedded in the current embodied intelligence? So Koki Shuzo on time and the problem of contingency, he is saying that he actually focuses on the art creation, and he's saying that art is a creation based on a spontaneous creativity made possible, through mutual contingency. And contingency appears only through dynamism. As you can see, he's only talking about contingency from the perspective of time. So time flow. So he's saying that from past, there's only inevitable necessity, which is from past we can learn about the causality, but present is a reality that is happening now, right at this moment. But in the future, there's the possibility is open there. But he's saying that contingency can only happen at present. And I remember that one participant was asking emotion to Dr. Kanai's talk, but Cookie also talks about emotion, how the emotion is going to be created through the interaction with the environment or with the human beings, so, or not only for human beings, but with other animals or other beings as well, I guess. But he's saying that contingency appears only through dynamism, through freedom of all things habitable, such as lineage of time and rigid causality. And freedom includes choices to be either active or passive. And I guess this is the most important point, because I'm quite sure that in the current in active or embodied intelligence, this passivity on activity, the balance between the passive and active is very vague at this moment. And so he also continues, some kind of emotions arises only through time flow in relation to loose causality and contingency. So he's saying that it's very loose causality. That is why we don't know what's going to happen. It only happens right at this moment. And that is why we feel kind of emotional to the thing that is happening right here at this right moment. So he's saying that, you can see on the right side of the figure that anxiety and tension and surprise and excitement, it only comes in relation to time flow. Okay.
Hey, Maki, is this all?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I got another one slide. Can I just quickly go through? So my conclusion is how to tackle multimodal problem. So I have 3 questions for you all to think about: how to embed contingency by setting randomness, how to define will and aim, and how to let the embodied intelligence to make its own choice in a limited circumstances. So this is all my talk. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, my computer was frozen a little bit, so I'm sorry. I was like,
don't worry. I think we hear you very well. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It's really in line with what we have been discussing all morning today. Just quick question from my side. Do you think all this contingency experience, do we need the embodiments to be dynamic? Like if we have a fixed body, like conventional robots, do you think we can have a less contingency, or do we need to grow over time physically, or not? What's your views on this kind of dynamic embodiment?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I cannot answer you right now. I'm sorry. I'm a philosopher. I'm very slow at thinking. So
no worry. I think this is going to be the discussion afterwards. So let's come back to this point afterwards. Okay, thank you, Maki. We'll come back to this. And by the way, Maki had a paper from last year conference included in the special issue of Artificial Life. So if anyone interested in more deeper insight on how talk, we can actually have a paper about this.